Welcome to all participants from around the world joining us today, the United Nations International Day of Happiness, to talk about the importance of happy schools. So my name is Satoko Yano. I'm a program specialist in the section of education policy at UNESCO headquarters. And next to me is my colleague, Juliet Norman-Smith. And together we will be your masters of ceremony for today's webinar. Before we dive into discussions, it's our honor to invite UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education, Ms. Stefania Giannini, to give her opening remark. And thank you, Stefania. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Satoko. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and happy, first of all, UN International Day of Happiness. That's what we are celebrating today together. It's a great pleasure. It's a great honor for me to open this conversation. The adoption of this International Day was instigated, as maybe all of you know, by Bhutan, a country that famously adopted a very inspiring goal, the goal of gross national happiness over gross national product. So it's a big shift in the vision of how we can measure development, how we can measure actually progress for the humankind. And it's certainly today also still a very inspiring vision and one that we all at UNESCO have very much enthusiastically translated into our own programming. Many people continue to believe that an effective education system is a system that puts pressure on students, on teachers, emphasizing high stakes exam competition over cooperation, collaboration, and well-being, and limiting also extracurricular, or what we call extracurricular learning, in favor of the what we can call the fundamentals, foundational learning. Of course, this is very much important. We go to school to learn how a specific subject must be put in practice, how can be inspired by theory and methodologies. But beyond that, we go to school to be educated and to unlock our potential. And well-being and happiness are very much integrated in this vision and should be as much as possible emphasized. By the way, data proves otherwise than this conventional vision of education competition-oriented, so to say. We know that our schools are facing a kind of dual crisis in learning and, of course, and we are very much on top of this crisis in the UN, especially post-COVID, especially through this transformation process we are running, and in well-being. And this is the topic of the day. In low and middle income countries, for instance, up to 70% of children cannot read basic tests by age and understand, most importantly, by age 10. 244 million children are out of school, still, mostly at the secondary level, and millions more are in school, but not learning as they should be. Added to these are increasing rates of depression, of stress, suicide, unfortunately, among young people in many contexts, especially through the COVID-19 lens. We could, unfortunately, see a very dramatic situation beyond these figures. And this is very much fueled by conflict, ideological divides, bullying, pandemics, and all the stuff that we know, and they are very much treating this vision and this common goal to assure quality, inclusive education for all, including the right to be well, to be fine at school, and to find our own way to be happy. The toll of these stressors on health and well-being are leading to student dropout and teachers shortages. This is another important dimension for us. In fact, at the Transforming Education Summit last year, almost 2/3 of countries said that they are very much worried about the well-being of their teachers and their students. And this is an important statement. And also it implies also a very important commitment to change. UNESCO believes that rather than being the source of these struggles or exacerbating them, schools can and must be central players in turning the situation around. But just what could these transformative schools that we hope to build look like? So how can we really design an ideal happy school? That's where Happy Schools Framework, UNESCO Happy Schools Framework comes in. It puts school happiness at the real heart of improving learning experiences for all. It focuses on the so-called 4 Ps, let me mention them, the overarching principles that underlie a school's culture, the people who are found within, including teachers, of course, students and parents, the process of schooling from classroom practices through to meals and extracurricular activities, and the places where students learn. Kickstarted almost a decade ago by UNESCO office in Bangkok. Let me congratulate our colleagues for taking this initiative. And this framework has had now such resonance in the countries in which it has been implemented successfully that we decided to launch it globally. I'm thinking of, for example, of Vietnam, where the Happy School project is using actually the framework to train some 10,000 school principals, or Portugal, in another region of the world, where a Happy Schools course for teachers and school leaders is being offered to the ministry network of some 800 public school clusters. So these are very much concrete examples of how an inspiring vision can be translated in a very productive and changing and transformative tools. It's time now for the education community to roundly reject the idea that happiness is a kind of luxury, something that is not essential to human beings' right to learn, to work, to live together, or a trade-off with academic achievement. It's not absolutely the case. On the contrary, happiness is, or at least it should be still, a core purpose of education, an effective way to improve learning outcomes, overall well-being, and to reduce inequalities. And most importantly, I would say the real critical dimension for people, for individuals to contribute to a better society. It's a question of being in harmony with yourself and to be able and capable to contribute to a real inclusive and peaceful society. Today, we'll have the opportunity to hear, I'm sure, more about the inspiring Happy Schools framework and all the initiatives being put into practice by those who are experiencing and leading them since the kickoff of this nice and powerful process being launched 10 years ago in Bangkok. I'm really very much looking forward with you to make Happy Schools a real strong dimension for all worldwide, and happy International UN Day of Happiness to all once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefania, for reminding us the central importance of happiness for transforming education. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Bareec Kuwait, Director for Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems, to give us a brief overview of today's webinar agenda, vision, and the objectives of UNESCO's Happy School initiative. Thank you. Thank you, Bareec. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Satoko, and thanks to ADG Giannini. Very good afternoon. Welcome to all colleagues who are joining us today. I would like to reiterate what Madam Giannini just said. Happiness should be a core purpose of education, because education is about learning experiences, not just about academic knowledge and results. Education systems are responsible for much more than developing academic skills or preparing learners for the world of work, as we also usually think about education. Today, we expect education systems to shape citizens who contribute to the continued improvement of their community, to progress greener, safer, more skilled, cohesive, and democratic societies in a rapidly changing world. These are the overall purposes of education that we are thriving and for which we are also acting. Obviously, the world looked quite different when UNESCO's Happy School initiative started nearly 10 years ago in 2014 in UNESCO Bangkok, and well before the pandemic. The project was at the time intended to be a response to a problem of competitiveness, of stressful education processes and experience, of assessment-focused education system that were damaging young people's desire to remain lifelong learners as we want them to be. But also in this education system pressure, and Madame Janine mentioned that before, pressure on teachers for performance, for accountability about results and standardized assessment. And for no longer considering themselves as a lifelong learners and engaging in a desire to stay teachers. This is reflected in teacher shortages, but also reflected in some countries with what we call big resign. And that's the intention of teachers to resign from the teaching profession because the profession is no longer attractive from their perspective. So it's fitting then that today, in this International Day of Happiness, that we also speak about education, because the importance of happiness in and for learning is gaining traction worldwide. Our webinar today will take us different parts of the world to hear how different partners and countries and member states are channeling the pillars of Happy School as they were presented by Madame Giannini into their context, into their schools, into their education systems. So first, we will have a panel of distinguished speakers from the OECD, European Union, Kuwait, the Happiness Project, of course, and UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education for Peace to share about their relevant frameworks at the national and international levels. Then we will have a short dialogue with the young school happiness activists from Kenya. Finally, we'll have 3 presentations of countries using UNESCO's Happy School framework, namely Portugal, Viet Nam, and Yemen. With that, let me pass back the floor to my colleagues, Satoko and Juliet, who will be guiding us today to advocate for integrating happiness into education policy so that all learners everywhere can attend happy schools. I believe that while working together, our committed policymakers, teachers, school leaders, parents, and key stakeholders can make a great use of UNESCO's Happy School framework and in bringing in hope and joy into lives of teachers, our young learners, and all our communities within a lifelong learning perspective. Over to you, Juliet and Satoko. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boren, for setting the tone for the day. And now it's my pleasure to kick off today's event with a keynote presentation from Grégoire Borst, Professor of Developmental Psychology and Cognitive Neuroscience of Education at the Université Paris-Descartes. Professor Borst is also the director of the Laboratory of the Study of Child Development and Education. He works in close collaboration with the educational community and with UNESCO, and today he will tell us a little bit about the relationship between happiness and improved learning that he has studied. So Grégoire, over to you.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation. And let me just share my screen with you. Oops, a moment. A bit of a struggle here. Okay, should be fine. Okay, so let me show you a bit why do we need happy schools from a brain and psychological perspective. So precisely, we heard already that there is a need for to promote well-being at school, and I'm going to show you why from both the perspective of the brain, but also from the perspective of learning. not only in very young kids, because we tend to over-focus on the younger one, but also for adolescents, because adolescence is a period of time where you struggle more from a well-being perspective. So I'll try to explain why it is we need to be careful for that. We told like already that there's been like a huge increase of the difficulties in emotional problems, in conduct problems, and more generally in decreased well-being in students after COVID. If you look at the US, so you don't have to look necessarily in developing countries, but all across the countries, there is like lower well-being. And if you look at the average difficulties, when you average all the different type of difficulties, you reach like basically close to 25% of the students in the US are suffering from difficulties after COVID. We also know that while COVID hasn't affected in the same way all students, and of course it increases the difficulties of students with vulnerabilities due, for instance, to the socioeconomic status of the families. Here is a study in Netherlands where you can show that the learning loss are higher in basically students from low SES background. So again, like when we look at the overall picture, we also need to look within each countries of the fact that students with vulnerabilities have been increasingly more affected by the COVID crisis. And of course, it speaks to the different countries. Last but not least, we also know that if you look across what explained the type of negative outcomes of COVID, this is like another study from Netherlands where they looked at basically the socioeconomic status of the family of the students, whether it was related to negative mood, but they showed that actually this relationship was mediated by two factors. One was difficulty in the uncertainty of the future. And of course, when you come from a low SES, there's an increased uncertainty about your future. And this was actually mediated by a large number of functions of the brain called executive functions that are actually functions that regulate all the other functions that we use to learn. So we can already see that when we look at well-being, it's actually engaged psychological processes that are really important for learning, such as executive functions. We know that executive functions that allows you, for instance, to regulate automatisms in your brain, that allows you to basically supervise the activity that you're engaged in, are actually one of the best predictor of your academic success, but also about your educational flourishing and success. Okay, so why it is important to also take into account the brain here? Well, because we know that basically social inequalities will have an effect on brain development. If you look at the center piece of this slide, this is all the areas in the brain that are actually affected by the socioeconomic status of the family you're from. And if you look at the different areas within this brain, is basically all the areas that are key for learning. It's basically the areas that you need to speak and to understand language. It's the areas you need to memorize information in your long-term memory. It's the areas that you need to regulate emotions. And those are also all the areas that you need to basically learn new rules, regulate your cognition. So socioeconomic status has a direct effect on how your brain develops, and that actually creates the educational inequalities we see in our educational system. Okay, but of course we have like, this is the issue, but we have like one thing that is key about the brain is that it's incredibly plastic. So it can change due to learning. So if we find the right leverage, we can actually compensate for the socioeconomic status of the students. And you will see why I'm like so focused on the socioeconomic status, because A, they are more affected by crisis because they are more vulnerable, but also you will see that it's actually really much related to well-being. Because if you look at why there is an effect of socioeconomic status on the brain, it has an effect because in those type of contexts, you get chronic stress. So children are actually more exposed to chronic stress. And you might know that if you're exposed to chronic stress, your cortisol level will increase. And the issue is that we have in the brain a number of receptors of cortisol. So as you get more exposed to chronic stress, you get higher level of cortisol in your body, and this cortisol will actually be linked to different areas in the brain, and all the areas that are actually affected by socioeconomic status are areas where you get like a higher concentration of cortisol receptors. Of course, socioeconomic status will also be will affect sleep, and sleep will affect brain development because it actually has effect on neuroplasticity and also in learning, because you might know that sleep is one of the critical factors for memorization of information. So you have poor sleep, poor memorization, less plasticity of the brain, so a lower academic outcome for it. And the last thing is also that we know that within those contexts, you tend to have like a worse emotional environment, because you get like in more difficult situations. So emotional stability is lower in those families. Of course, this is like the overall picture, and there are, of course, difference family by family and also difference by country. So, for instance, if you look at the effect of socioeconomic status in different countries, it doesn't have necessarily the same effects. It's higher, for instance, in the US than it is in Europe, because in Europe you get all this social protection that actually protect against the effect of socioeconomic status. Okay, so why do I insist so much on socioeconomic status? Because we know that because you affect areas of the brain that are affected, for instance, in emotional regulation, you also have effects on learning, because you're going to have effect on anxiety. And so we know that children from low SES background tend to have higher math anxiety, and this higher math anxiety is actually related to the activity of a key area of the brain that is involved in our emotional reactivity, which is the amygdala, that it's shown in this brain depicted by these small dots here. And if you look at the activity of this amygdala within a math task, if you have high math anxiety, you're going to have higher basically activity of the amygdala, showing that you feel that you're in a threat situation due to being involved in math. So what we're trying to understand in my lab, and this is especially a subject like carried over by Teresa Yuculano, which is one of the researchers in my lab, is to understand why anxiety will increase activity in the amygdala and why it has an effect on the performance in math tasks. And what she showed basically, and this is just the right part of the slide, is that basically when you have higher math anxiety, even though you perform as well as students with low math anxiety, in order to achieve the same level of performance, you overactivate not only the emotional part of the brain, but also the part of the brain that are involved in mathematical cognition. So once you have like emotional difficulties, such as anxiety in math, you tend to have like also effects on the large number of areas in the brain that are directly related to your ability to perform well in math. And it also shows that you can achieve the same level of performance, but you have to overactivate this area, which means you're going to have more cognitive fatigues. So also when we think about well-being, we also need to think about the issue of kids that seems to perform at the same level, but actually have to recruit way more cognitive and brain resources to achieve the same level of performance. Okay, so just to show you that we can also relate that to socioeconomic status, this is a small study we did like in France in a low SES neighborhood. And what we found, I'm going to skip like to some of the results because I want to go to the adolescent part. But basically what we did, we evaluate anxiety, general anxiety. We evaluate specific anxiety in math, and we looked at math performance. And what we found is that when you come from low SES areas, and when you go to low SES or schools that basically essentially have students from low SES backgrounds, you find poor math achievement, you find more general anxiety and more mathematical anxiety. But what is interesting is if you look at the relationship, there is no direct link between general anxiety and mathematical performance, but actually if you have more general anxiety, you're more prone to develop mathematical anxiety, and then it for those who develop mathematical anxiety, you have poorer performance in math. So again, it speaks to the idea that when we are focusing on well-being, we actually are focusing on academic achievement because the two are very linked. But it also speaks to the idea that when you have difficulty in math, it doesn't mean that necessarily you have difficulty in numerical cognition per se. It also could be like a well-being problem or an anxiety problem within this specific discipline, basically. Okay, so what we do basically? Well, first of all, we know from longitudinal studies that if you look at what could be the predictor, not only of your educational achievement, but also about your educational success, like later on in life, it's actually not IQ per se that will predict your educational achievement. And when I talk about educational achievement, I'm not only talking about having good grade at school. I'm talking about a whole range of other domains, for instance, mental health, physical health when you're adults, your professional success, and about your well-being. And this is actually not predicted by IQ between 4 and 11 years of age. It's predicted a bit from the socioeconomic status of your family, but it's also very much explained by your ability to self-control. And so it means that if we want to have resilient educational system, this is the type of abilities that we need to foster in young children, because those are the most predictive of their educational achievement. So that basically calls for social emotional learning, and you know that there's multiple different programs that actually been evaluated. But if you basically implement social emotional learning programs such as PATH, with one of the activity that is directly related to developing basically your self-control during primary school, you have like basically effects throughout the academic time you spend in school and also in the higher education level. For instance, here is like the effect where you can look at the percentage of students that stay at school within the general track, and that doesn't go to vocational education. You have a higher number for those who participate in the program than for those who didn't participate in the program, and same goes for even enrollment at the university level. It's also decreased ADHD symptoms, so impulsiveness, for instance, and it decreased non-aggressive conduct disorder throughout the time that students spend at school. And it also had effect on parental behaviors, where you find less corporal punishment when those type of social emotional learning program are implemented in school. So why it's so important to have the social emotional learning program? Because basically we also know that when you're exposed to violence as a kid, you have negative outcome in your ability to deal with negative information, essentially because you change the relationship between two key areas of the brain, the amygdala that we already talked about, and the orbital cortex, the orbital frontal cortex, which is an area within the prefrontal cortex that regulates the activity of the amygdala. But if you find a way to develop basically a better social environment, you can compensate for the effect of being exposed to violence. So again, this speaks to the idea that social emotional learning is super important, especially during adolescence, because adolescence is an area or a time in life where you get more reactive to traits, to basically negative emotion. And so there is a special need to be very careful about the adolescence. And so I see that I might be running out of time, so I'm going to rush through the end of what I'm going to show you. And why are we so interested in adolescence? Because we just finished a paper where we look basically at what predicts basically academic achievement in adolescence in a national exam, standardized exam in France. And I'm going to go rush through it. But what we found basically, if you look at what could be the resilient academic or the academic resilient factors, so basically you look at low SES students that actually achieve good performance in this test, what we found was the predictive factors of achieving well when you come from low SES background is happiness, higher academic self-concept, less difficulties in executive functions, and better metacognitive knowledge. So this is the type of basically factors we should play on to reduce the effect of SES, and especially the type of low well-being that is associated to it, to actually promote success at school, even in the academic field. And so I'm going to just close on that to say, basically, the take-home message is that, going back there, that health and environmental crisis revealed the many vulnerabilities of our educational systems and call for an urgent response from our educational system. The learning crisis shouldn't be viewed as one affecting academic learning, but the fundamental of learning, cognitive and social emotional process involved in learning. And we need this in both primary, secondary, and higher education to mitigate the effects of the educational health and environment crisis today and for the years to come. So thanks a lot for your attention. And I want to thank all the members of my lab that actually contributed to all the things I presented today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gregor, and the colleagues in the lab. It's an excellent presentation. And thank you very much for being conscious about the time. Thank you for an excellent insight into what neuroscience tells us about happiness and the improved learning experience and outcomes. As we know, like researchers have struggled to establish a causal relationship between students' happiness and learning outcomes so far. So research such as yours really supports that happiness and well-being is so positively associated with academic achievement, better behavior and motivation, and overall well-being, especially among the disadvantaged. So now it's time to move on to our first panel discussion, which we will ask the question, what do happy schools look like in your context, and why do we need them? It will be an opportunity to hear impression and relevant examples from countries and international organizations. We will have 3 rounds of questions, and each panelist will have 2 minutes to respond. And it's my pleasure to welcome 5 distinguished panelists to share their experiences today. I kindly invite you to turn on your cameras as I introduce you. And first, we have Alison Beirut. Alison is the education lead at Project Everyone and founder of the world's largest lesson, a project delivered in partnership with UNICEF and UNESCO to raise students' awareness and support and action for SDGs. Welcome, Alison. And then we have Leila Lupis, the network coordinator for New Schools Plus network of the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development, OECD. Leila, thank you for coming. And then we have Oana Falcon. She's a policy officer working on inclusive school education policies in the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture of the European Commission. Oana is part of the Pathways to School Success team with particular focus on supporting well-being and mental health at school. Welcome, Oana. And we also have Amara Martinez, a senior program officer leading the program team at UNESCO-MGIEP, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education, Peace and Sustainable Development. Welcome, Amara. And we do also hope to welcome Her Royal Highness Sheikha Insa Al-Sabah, founder and CEO, Bareec Program for Positive Thinking and Wellbeing from the State of Kuwait. But Your Royal Highness, are you able to join? Unfortunately, if not, then we have the 4 very distinct, we can start with the 4 panelists. So let me just then begin with Alison to speak of your initiative and the curriculum. In 2022, Project Everyone, in partnership with Walls and Ice Cream brand, developed the Happiness Project with the ambition to support children in accessing the tools they need to live happier lives. So we now piloted the Happiness Project in 5 countries. Can you tell us about the objectives and scopes and implementation of these pilots, please? Welcome, Alison. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and happy International Day of Happiness to everybody. Just to kind of give you a tiny bit of background to this project. In 2021, Walls Ice Cream, which is a Unilever brand, a global brand, conducted some consumer research amongst adults and children to explore themes linking to the brand idea of happiness and joy. And they researched with kind of 17,000 people, and they were looking at trying to understand what the drivers of happiness are from people's own points of view. And one of the things that they discovered was that for children, there was a real sense that loneliness or a feeling of isolation, and on the flip side, their connection to others, was something that helped them feel happier. And as a result, they then came to us at Project Everyone and asked us to start to work with them just to understand how they might be able to support children in accessing the right kinds of tools to address these issues and to live happier and more connected lives. So we created a project, we've called it the Happiness Project, and it's a social and emotional learning program for children aged 8 to 14. It's made up of 5 experiential learning modules that are designed to deliver what we believe to be the five key ingredients to happiness: kindness, gratitude, movement, connections, and creativity. And we developed a theory of change around the idea that if you empower children with the tools and daily habits to instill positive psychology early on in their lives, then they will become more emotionally resilient, and they can share these kind of ideas at home and at school and even with their wider community. And obviously, as we've just heard, the COVID time has kind of heightened the need for this, and we saw a lot of increased loneliness and youth mental health challenges really kind of coming to the fore during that time. So our ambition is to help children understand that happiness can be explored through their learning, and that there are tools and tips and tricks that they can have to develop positive habits and mindsets to help them live happier and more connected lives, to build more positive relationships with each other, with their teachers, with their family and communities. And by focusing on this learning in school, I think it helps to demonstrate to students that their teachers, school leaders and parents recognize that happiness is a really important element in creating the conditions for learning, especially in the way that it helps build stronger relationships between teachers and students. So the great thing about this project, from my perspective, is that working with a global brand means that they're really interested in exploring the idea in multiple locations. And that's given us the opportunity to test how the idea works in different contexts, how it needs to be adapted to reflect those different contexts and their cultural and social values, and how it supports wider initiatives like the Happiness or the Happy Schools framework. So what we've been doing is working on the ground with local NGOs who have established relationships with teachers and schools. They might be running schools themselves, they might be running government-approved teacher training programs or government-approved non-academic programs such as after-school clubs or project-based learning activities, and especially those working either in social emotional learning already or those reaching underserved communities. And we work closely with those delivery partners to understand happiness and what it means culturally and socially where they are, and then to contextualize or adapt the resources and materials in line with local education policies. And then we work with them to pilot the approach. And we've started in 2022, just on a smaller scale, in certain locations before moving any further. And we have so far piloted in Pakistan, Indonesia and Turkey. And collectively, we've reached 135,000 children. And our ambition is to build on that throughout 2023.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really great that the project and everyone is working hard also to rigorously document impact and promote best practice between the pilot countries in different cultural contexts, which is very extremely important. So now we'd like to invite Leila. The OECD Schools Plus Network aims to connect and then empower schools to share innovation and build evidence towards achieving quality education, equity and well-being. Schools Plus hasn't yet launched, but then could you tell us, please, when and why the idea was born? What was the OECD's rationale for its creation, and what is its intended scope for implementation? Leila, please come in. Thank you.
Thanks, Satoko. Good afternoon, everyone, and congratulations to UNESCO for organising this important event today. So as Satoko said, I'm here today representing a new global initiative, which is about to be launched by the OECD. It's called Schools Plus, and it's going to be a global network which aims to bring different partners together, but really to put schools at the center of education development. So that's our vision in relation to this question of how can we make schools happier places. And this has, of course, come from, as you know, during the COVID pandemic, there was teachers and schools were finding solutions to multiple challenges. And so the OECD and different partners, including UNESCO, came together and began to capture these solutions and these innovations through videos. So teachers from around the globe were sharing their experiences and their practices and how they were doing their best to ensure not only learning continuity, but also the well-being of their learners. So this new Schools Plus network has grown from this initiative, and it's based on the principle that more needs to be done to foster, to capture, and to share these school-level innovations so that schools are ultimately empowered to play a more active role in leading improvements in education. So we're going to be going about this in 3 ways. The first is to foster exchange, to provide a space for education networks to learn with and from each other on the leading practices to support schools. And this means bringing together large education networks and ministries of education, which don't necessarily usually work together. So we're creating this kind of network of networks to foster this exchange between the different participants and also make the link between practice, so what's happening in schools, and research and policy, but still with keeping schools at the center of what we do. So that's the first thing. The second is that we aim to support structured learning and innovation. We know that to be able to share innovations, we need not only to identify them, but we need to be able to speak about them in a common language. And this common language needs to be used to understand their effectiveness or their impact. And in particular, to help a school leader or a teacher to understand if something works in another school, is it actually going to work in mine? And in this way, to better understand innovations and to support their use and scaling. And lastly, what we want to do is to inform policy, research, and practice. So to create an evidence base which can be used to leverage schools' innovations and expertise to better inform decision makers and education policy across countries. And of course, all these principles are greatly aligned with those in the Happy Schools framework, because ultimately the goal is to foster student learning and well-being through innovation, and also to capture these innovations and ensure that they're used widely. Back to you, Satoko. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Leila. Indeed, like we have pretty much looking at the same direction on the same page. We look forward to hearing more about the program in this session and working closely with you. And then now I'm very happy to invite, I believe, Her Royal Highness Sheikha Intisar Al-Sabah is able to join. And are you here?
Yes, I am. And thank you for your patience. I was just stuck in traffic, and unfortunately, the link that was sent wasn't working. So I'm on my phone, so you'll have to excuse me because someone sent it to me by WhatsApp. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. And I was really enjoying the previous ladies and the work they were doing. And I think you wanted to ask me something, Satoko, or shall I
thank you.
tell you?
No, thank you very much, Your Highness. Let me just introduce you to the people in the meeting. Yes, thank you. So Her Royal Highness Sheikha Intisar Al-Sabah, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, in good enough. And she is the founder and the CEO and the Bareec program for positive thinking and well-being from the state of Kuwait. So my first question to you was, so before the COVID, your foundation developed Bareec, a program for Kuwait high schools that uses positivity for greater academic excellence and well-being. So could you give us a brief overview of the program, its scope and implementation? Thank you, Your Highness, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So Bareec basically means light. And that's exactly what our aim was, to bring the inner light of the students through the use of positive psychology. And it's an education program that uses positive psychology interventions simple exercises that are used throughout the week. And in high schools, in public high schools, both boys and girls schools, because we have a segregated system, and in all educational areas of Kuwait. So it's about a 5 to 10 minute per week. And we train the educators. So the key is to train the educators and implement the exercises on the educators. Because once the educators understand the influence of these small interventions or exercises on themselves, they will be able to easily transfer it to the students. And we have a very precise educator's guide book, which is scripted as little as possible, but with enough information so the educator, after the training that they do, are able to understand and continue understanding the curriculum. And we also have a learner's workbook where the students fill in their thoughts. And it's almost like they fill in, it's like a journal that the students fill in, and so they can see the progress throughout the year. And also share their experience in it. So just before COVID hit, we were implementing in 47 high schools. We were training up to 600 educators or teachers, and we reached almost 17,000 students within a 3-year span. So we started with a pilot study that the 3 teachers in 3 different schools with about 30 students in each class to having about 17,000 students just before COVID hit. And during COVID, unfortunately, the government, Ministry of Education chose not to do any activity, and that's what Bareec is considered. So they concentrated mainly on the curriculum. And so we had to stop.
Thank you very much, Your Highness. I think it's also quite really very interesting. And then I hope that the new will start very soon after the COVID, now that it's very much relevant. So now that I would like to turn to now to more into policy.
Can I just share the impact before we speak about policy? If I can hear you wanted to say the policy.
No, Your Highness, that will be your second question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now we're turning on to the Ms. Anna Falcon. So from the European Union Commission. So you have been the key member of the team drafting and passing the pathways to school success policy framework to all the EU member states. So can you tell us a little about how this framework was proposed and drafted, and what are its core components, please? Thank you, Anna. Please come in.
Thank you so much, Satoko, and really a warm congratulations for organizing this webinar on such an important topic and such an important day. So indeed, I have been part of a really wonderful and engaged team that throughout 2021, 2022 put together the Pathways to School Success Initiative, which was adopted last November in the Council, so by the representative of the EU member states. Just before entering in how Pathways was brought together, I would like to remind you how the European Union functions in the field of education. So the EU member states, they are responsible for the content of teaching and the organization of their learning, of their education and training systems, while the European Commission offers support, which takes the forms of guidelines, policy guidelines, opportunity for peer learning, for exchange of practices, funding. Erasmus Plus is a key instrument. And there is a framework of cooperation, which is called the European Education Area. Now, within this framework of cooperation, it really in relation to Pathways, because it's really broad, the framework, it goes in a lifelong learning perspective. but related to pathways, there are three main challenges that we aim to address. So first of all, early school leaving from education and training. There have been really significant efforts in this direction, but still the numbers are high, 9.7% at EU level. We aim to reduce it below 9% by 2020. The second aspect is underachievement in basic skills. So the share of low achieving 15-year-olds in reading, mathematics, and skills, it's still very high, 22%. The aim is to go below 15% by 2030. And then a third component, a huge challenge, is well-being. Pupil sense of belonging at school, it's declining. Bullying is widespread. Mental health around Europe is posing serious issues with 20% of school children experiencing mental health, in particular anxiety and depression. So Pathways aims to address these challenges in an integrated manner. Its vision of school success is to address in a systemic way, including along with academic achievement and attainment, including well-being, social-emotional education, and promotion of supportive learning environments. Now, how Pathways was proposed very, very quickly, it builds on a decade of cooperation, European cooperation in the field of policies to reduce early school leaving in particular, but now it takes a broader approach to address also underachievement and placing well-being at its center. It's a wide product of a really wide consultation with member states, stakeholders, and it's based on the latest insight from research. It takes the form of a council recommendation, which is the main legal instrument we are working on with in the frame of education, and its target is really primary and secondary education. Now, what's in its components, the Pathways proposes a new framework for action with the objective of inspiring member states when developing strategies towards school success. And this framework identifies key conditions and a wide range of measures going from prevention, intervention, compensation, with really a high focus on prevention, which aims also to address universal measures, targeted individual support measures to learners. And all this, it's a reference tool for national, regional, local, at school level. So policymakers and at school level and other practitioners in the field of education and training. Just in a nutshell, to conclude, what we see with the adoption of Pathways to School Success recommendations, so last November, EU policymakers acknowledged the need for an integrated approach to address early school leaving and underachievement, and with well-being being a key component and at the center of the educational policies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alana. And also we understand that you adopted the 2022 Council recommendation on Pathways to School Success. It's a very big congratulations to that. We'd love to hear more about that later. But then we start, and then we're moving on to the last panelist, Amara. And so to continue with the policy perspective. So at UNESCO-MGIEP, you've done a lot of work on mainstreaming social and emotional learning to policy. So could you tell us a bit about how happiness has played in the role of in UNESCO's social and emotional learning framework, please? Amara, please come in. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Satoko, and hi to everybody on the call. So at UNESCO-MGIEP, well, just for context, we do believe that human flourishing is intrinsically linked to education and learning. And so education really should provide, people and school learners with the tools, both mental as well as practical tools, to be able to follow their own path, which leads them to a flourishing life, and to really choose that for themselves. And so in our education systems, happiness is really critical to thrive as a student, particularly as young people and children that are really under pressure to perform. It's about dealing with interpersonal conflict. It's about dealing with things that are causing stress and anxiety. And having these stressful environments really impacts on both having stress within the school environment, but also having stress potentially from home. So this has an impediment both to learning and also sort of memory and interpersonal skills. So what we've said at the Institute is that how do we actually tackle this? And one of the things that we've said is that if you take a stressful environment, sort of give learners, teachers, and people within the school system an opportunity to really function through social and emotional competencies, they would be able to build self-regulation, emotional regulation that Gregoire talked about. Thinking about emotional awareness. How do I know when somebody's angry? How do I know when somebody's sad? And really being able to give children and their teachers the tools to actually do this. Then I think, as an example, what we found through the Institute and with our work with adolescents and youth is that if you basically use SEL competencies to really think about violence and conflict and trying to slow those automatic responses, it has a very positive effect on young people's lives. And so it's really about taking that step back. And I think when we talk about mainstreaming, it is important for us to work with the ministries of education to really ensure that we are infusing SEL into the normal programming. So not just seeing SEL as an add-on or something nice or a soft skill, because that's really not what it is, but rather looking at it from the perspective of how do I actually infuse SEL into mathematics? How do I infuse it into physics? How do I infuse it into these hard skills and sort of make it work as normal? Rather than seeing it as an add-on. And I think this for us has been primarily the way that we've been able to infuse SEL into core ministries of education across the globe. Thanks, Satoko. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Amara, for highlighting the critical importance of integrating SEL at every element of education. Unfortunately, we are running very much behind of time. And then just wanted to invite you all the panelists one more round very quickly. If you could tell us about lessons learned or how you plan to move ahead from now, and then see how you see improved learning in your framework. If you don't mind, if I call on Alison to come in, please, very quickly in 1 or 2 sentences, please. Sorry about
Sure.
that.
So it's very early days with this project, but we have conducted a full evaluation using a new framework that we've created, and particularly richly in Pakistan. And the key kind of learning points are that at a classroom level, the pilot had a positive effect on the learning environment, with peer-to-peer relationships being very clearly strengthened and observed by both teachers and parents. Teachers reported feeling happier and calmer in themselves, particularly because they could see that the relationship between the peers in the classroom was calm and creating a calm atmosphere. And then the whole school, comparing those who did and didn't take part in the programs, the whole school, those who didn't take part were really keen to be able to access the resources. And that's our ambition now, to create kind of happy schools using a common language, a common kind of emotional literacy, and then to enable then us to measure the impact on that and learning outcomes.
Thank you, Alison. It's very encouraging to hear that it's already despite being at the very early stage, we started to see some positives of impact, or sort of the influences on the better learning, and exciting to hear about the next steps. And then with that, then maybe we can invite Leila. As OECD Schools Plus network hasn't yet begun, but then what kind of sort of the linkage between happiness and improved learning that you're hoping to see, and then how we are planning to move ahead? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Satoko. So in the first biennium, we're really going to be putting our focus on pedagogy, and innovations in pedagogy as a key to improve learning and wellbeing in schools. And this is in particular recognizing and supporting a diversity in teaching approaches as a pathway to building more inclusive and a trusting environment within schools, but also a growth mindset amongst school actors. Which comes back again to this notion of the culture of learning, which we find in the Happy Schools framework. So just really quickly, we're looking at, in particular, 2 ways of doing this. So the first is going to be building an evidence base. So really looking at how can we understand these innovations in pedagogy in such a way that it becomes it leads to a kind of a robust evidence base, which allows us to share these practices across different contexts and countries. And then the second, of course, is also to elevate the voice of schools and to really make this link between schools and policy and decision makers. So to really create a place in which there is a stronger interaction between the schools in expertise, which we know exists, and the decision makers and the policy makers. So ultimately giving greater recognition to the voice of teachers and school leaders. And before I go, I'll just to say we're going to be officially launching on the 22nd of May. So we hope you'll be able to join us, and there'll be more in the OECD communications channels. Thanks, Satoko.
Thank you very much. We'll be very much looking forward to being part of the launch and then next steps as well. And then thank you. It's that. Let's go back to Her Highness Sheikh Intisar about the impact. So could you tell us about? Yes, please go ahead.
Yes.
And then from the next step.
I love what, and you'll have to excuse me because I've been in traffic, and so my mind was very mixed when I started, and the link wasn't working. So I loved what Amara said. How do you infuse SEL in all school subjects? Basically, we were able to do that by training all teachers in different subjects on implementing very, very simple positive psychology interventions, and also getting the teachers all together. And what happened was all teachers benefited, and thus all students benefited too. And I can say that because we do measure the impact of what we do. And within 6 weeks of implementing the program, we had around 4 to 7% better outlook on life with the students that implemented the program and the control group. So there is a better outlook on life in one part, and we had a 91% success rate with the schools that used the positive psychology intervention compared to 80%, and that's the next best school. 80% success rate, the one that did bring in happiness, bring in joy, bring in a more positive thinking into the classroom. When the teachers were able to bring that in, the students flourished, not only academically, but also less absenteeism. We have a 20 to 30% less absenteeism with the students, and up to 50% less absenteeism with the teachers. So teachers are very stressed. When they learn how to implement very simple positive psychology interventions, they're able to reduce their stress, they're able to work better, and thus have less absenteeism. And another very strong factor was 50% less bullying, because as the keynote speaker said in the beginning, how do we go from a competitive environment to a more collaborative environment? And when you're less stressed as a teacher, less stressed as a student, you tend to be more collaborative. The more collaborative you become, the less likely you're going to bully others. And that's 3 of the many things that we've measured, the impact of what we do. And it just starts with bringing a little bit of fun, I'll call it fun, into the classroom. Just simple exercises that take 5 to 10 minutes a day, that just infuses a bit of fun in the classroom, diffuses everyone's stress, makes the whole environment better. And we advocate very strongly for policy change for all schools. We see how stressed our students are. We see how stressed our teachers are. And just making them strive to have more academic achievement cannot be done without them having the ability to breathe, to relax, and to think in a better way. And they cannot do that when they're just running the whole time. So I personally advocate for a little bit more fun in the classroom, and then you can achieve so much more. Thank you for that.
Thank you very, very much, Your Highness. I mean, it's just exactly I think our goal as well inducing or introducing the fun or joy of learning in the classroom. And also thank you very much for also highlighting the importance of this, not stressing our teachers as well. So thank you. And then with that, then I'd like to now invite Oana to tell us about how the improved learning outcomes play in the pathways to school success framework, and then also if you could tell us about next steps of your program.
Thanks. So indeed, improved learning outcomes is the ultimate objective, but it's central to the pathway. So there are two things I would like to insist on, which really go in the direction of what the other panelists said. The importance of social-emotional learning, not as something on top, but really integrated in education and in all the dimensions of the education. It has a highly preventive value, and it applies to all learners. Regarding social and emotional learning, actually, this is one of the 8 key competences for lifelong learning as defined in the Council recommendation on key competencies, and again adopted by the EU member states in 2018. And it was an important step because it really went into the direction of acknowledging that this dichotomy between heart and mind, between social and emotional learning and academic achievement does not hold. So we need to go in an integrated manner. There is also a framework, a conceptual framework, which was developed by the colleagues in Joint Research Center in ISPRA, which is called LifeComp, with the idea behind to set a framework on the definition. What do we understand by personal learning and learn competence, and to use it as a basis for curricular development or activities. So if you are curious, it's something to inspire you. Then the other big concept is really the whole school approach. We've seen this in practice. It works with the policies on early school leaving. It bears its fruit. Now we are trying to widen it up to really encompass all the well-being dimension. And here we are speaking, in addition to curriculum, we are really speaking about all this spectrum of supportive learning environments at classroom level, at school level, with these safe spaces that focus on caring relationship, collaboration, equality, safety, inclusion. So all these different aspects. Other things on important elements of the whole school approach, of course, extracurriculum activities, sports, art, nature-based. Learner voice, not only in the classroom, but around the whole school activity, supporting teacher education and well-being. And of course, the increased work with other partners around the school that can complement and help school where they do not have and cannot have the competencies. Now, what's next? Implementation of pathways to school success via a working group with member states, where UNESCO and OECD colleagues are also part of, also with other stakeholders. This goes with a mandate until 2025. In parallel, we are launching with an expert group on supporting learning environments and well-being at school, with the objective of helping developing guidelines at policy, but also at school level. Results expected for beginning of next year, and also very important, funding. Think of Erasmus+, it's supported thousands of projects in the field of well-being, anti-bullying, inclusion, not to mention, it's one of its main objectives. But these are really, now with the adoption of the pathways, they will be even more strengthened in the next years. So in case you are interested, please apply for Erasmus+ funding.
Thank you very, very much, Oana. We're definitely interested. I'm sure people on the end and in the audience would love to be engaged. Thank you very, very much. And then last but not least, once again, Amara, I actually have 2 questions to you. The first, Amara, it'd be great if you could tell us about how the EMC framework positioned happiness, not only for improved social and emotional learning, but also academic learning. Amara, please come in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Satoko. So the vision at the Institute is really built around building kinder brains. So there's a couple of things that goes with that. And really, we've tried to encapsulate that through what we call our EMC squared framework. So what this is it's basically comprised of 4 components. The first one, and these are all components that are woven across all of our programs for young people, for learners, and for youth, as well as teachers. And so this includes, all of our capacity building programs, and really the E stands for empathy. And this is how we really name and we recognize our own emotions and really understanding the perspective of others. So really perspective taking. This is particularly important in a school environment because you need to really understand each other. If you are with your peers as a student, if you are with your teacher as a student and a teacher relationship, and even amongst teachers and the school management system. Then we sort of have looking at mindfulness. Again, most of us on the call know what that is, but really it's about how do we regulate our own emotions. This is critically important in a school environment and even outside a school environment to be able to cultivate that sense of learning. So here we teach our course participants how to really practice mindfulness techniques. Our first C, which is really about critical inquiry, again, so important if you are in the school environment to be able to really say, is what I'm learning actually the best source of information that I can get? And how do I actually look at information critically, both from the view of a teacher, but also from the view of a student? So how do I look at problems? Do I look at it just because somebody said so? Or am I really taking that onus on myself? And so it is about looking at evidence, looking at how we think about logic and reasoning, and to be able to make good decisions within a school environment. And also being able to check ourselves. I think a lot of us, sometimes we go, but we don't really necessarily reflect and self-reflect on what we're doing. And that's critically important for young people, for learners within the school system. And so the last C, which is really probably one of our most important things, is to think about compassion. So we heard a lot about kindness, and we heard about how do we actually become more compassionate. But it is about, we generally think about compassion in terms of compassion to other people. But what we don't do is look at compassion to ourselves. How do we really display that and be able to learn that, to say, I need to be kind to myself first before I can actually be kind to others. And this is really encapsulated in all that we do. So thinking about the self and thinking about others, and not only people, mind you, it's also about other living beings. How do we actually make sure that our planet and our animals are actually treated correctly? And so these competencies, we know, are not just something that you wake up. It's something that needs to be taught. It's something that we need to really instill in ourselves and takes practice. And so we teach these skills to our teachers because, as the previous speaker said, it is about not only saying that teachers need SEL skills, but they need it for themselves in order to teach better in their classrooms to their learners. And so this is one of the most important things that we are striving for at the Institute, and really something that we encapsulate in all of the programs that we offer at the moment. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amara. Before going to the next question to Amara, now that I want to first thank all our panelists today for the participation. As usual, we don't have enough time to learn more about it, but then all the panelists have been sharing the links to the activities and programs, and then also we are putting in more information in the webinar report, so you'll be able to know more about each of the activities. And then, so we do, and I'm really looking forward to our close collaboration in the future to make schools around the world happy places to teach and learn. Thank you very much. That's the end of the first panel. And then now moving on to the next session or item of the webinar, inviting Amara for the last question of the first session, and the second, the kickoff question for the following session. So my question for you is that how can we make sure that we understand what students and young people need from their schools to make them happy places? So we understand to answer this, I believe you will be joined by another distinguished guest today. So let me pass on you to the floor to introduce him, and then for the next session. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Satoka. And I think your question is really answered by a young person. I think we cannot speak for young people, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce Francis Odhiambo from Kenya. He's an award-winning young leader, And we really want to talk to him about what happy schools could actually look like from his perspective. So we want to talk about what young people want, but from them specifically. So Francis was born and raised in one of the largest slums in Kenya, known as Kibera. He's also a very talented dancer, I've been told, and has experiences really in terms of how it was to grow up in Kenya in a marginalized community. So he didn't have the opportunity to really know how to navigate his difficulties and challenges as a child. And so he needed to learn this through doing. All he wanted really was a safe space that perhaps gave him the right tools to be able to navigate these challenges and also handle them. Because as a young person, it's not easy. You have a multitude of challenges facing you, and always difficult, even for adults, to be able to know what to do and when to do it. So luckily for him, he found a mentor, somebody that really inspired him, and started to give children in his community what he lacked growing up. And so really it's about providing that safe space, providing a space where you can actually express yourself and be guided correctly by the right people. And I think this is so critical for young people. So Francis, welcome. And I'm really excited to be able to talk to you today. We heard a lot about from all the various speakers, what really constitutes a happy school. And I want to hear a little bit from you. So as a young person growing up in Africa, growing up in Kenya, we share a common continent in this perspective, because I'm from South Africa and you're from Kenya. So technically you are actually my brother. And so, growing up on this continent, what do you think made your school a happy space for you? And where do you think things could have been done differently? So over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Amara, for a wonderful introduction and description. It's so nice to hear who I am again from somebody else. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Franco. And to your question, Amara, really, it took me like quite a while, like 2 minutes, to figure out what were the happy moments for me in school. And that clearly showed me there was a bit of a problem when I was in school. But again, there's this moment that came to me that stuck with me, and this moment was every time that I was in school during break times, I really felt happy. I really felt I was relieved, because during the break times is when I was like, oh, I'm going to express myself. I'm going to play the game that I wanted. I'm just coming from the desk, because when I was in school, learning was just in the desk or on the desk, and that was it. Learning was one way, from the teacher to the student, and that's it. Learning was not like active as we are now trying to change the education. So that I think with that, it's what I think could have been done differently when I was in school, for learning to be engaging, active, and actually looking at the pedagogy that allows the student to be at the center of learning, allow the student to have fun while learning, because when you're having fun, it's when you'll be even more motivated to learn. Because to me, I believe a happy person is equals to a productive person, or a happy student is equals to a productive student. And like a person with high EQ is equals to a happy person. So if the schools could allow us to tap into our emotions and be mindful and realize the powers that we are having inside, I think that would have been nice growing up. Yeah.
No, thanks so much for so much for that, Francis. I think what I'm hearing from you is that, your learning spaces is actually important. And so classrooms are not necessarily the best spaces for learning. Maybe you want to be under a tree, maybe you want to be somewhere else. It's really thinking about what would make you thrive as a young person being put into that space. And so I wanted to sort of touch on about what you are doing in Kenya at the moment with young people. So looking at your background in dance and sport and movement, and some of the key components of having a happy life is actually being able to move, to express yourself, and having those strong relationships. And also, making sure that through this, you are actually learning better. So a lot of your work is based on after-school programming, focused on dance and movement, as well as SEL. So how have you combined these things of your love of dancing together with actually giving children the skills to be able to learn better? And then also, what did it mean for you personally doing this type of program?
Yeah, let me start with like what happiness means to me. And sometimes happiness can be as simple as knowing how you're feeling and knowing how to go about it. Sometimes happiness will be being able to like be self-aware. Happiness sometimes means being confident. And to me, what I'm saying right now, it's what dance gave me. Dance gave me a chance to be confident on myself. Dance gave me a chance to actually know myself better and know I actually am a leader. It gave me a chance of like a sense of belonging. And that's what we're trying to do with ChezaCheza, and ChezaCheza means playful. And to us, like a child getting a chance to be playful, to be themselves, to be self-aware, to be empathetic with each other, knowing how to live with each other, knowing how to be creative and innovative in their field in the class, and having creative ideas as they grow up. To us, that means this child will grow up to be a happy person. Because if schools keeps on like producing unhappy people, then this circle will keep on going. We'll keep on having unhappy community, because schools are producing unhappy people, then unhappy people come to community. These people who are coming to the community are the teachers who are unhappy. Then again, it's the cycle going back. So what we are trying to do with ChezaCheza is we have a curriculum that incorporates dance as a tool for learning. And children in Africa will love dance. When you play music in whichever place in Africa, you'll see the kids dancing. And so we decided to use this opportunity as a chance for children to learn in a fun way, as a chance for youths to engage with each other and learning in a fun way. So our curriculum really, it's divided into main like 3 modules. So module 1 talks on knowing oneself, because in order for you to be happy, to be honest, you really first need to understand yourself. You need to know your superpowers. You need to know your areas of improvement and all that. So our first module in our curriculum tackles that, knowing oneself. Then our second module tackles now on how to live with each other in a community, because we live in a world of people, and for you to succeed, for you to be happy, you need to know how to live with each other. You need to be mindful of each other's feelings and just be human. Then our third module of curriculum talks now on being creative, innovative, and all that. So that's how we combine all this and dance, and everything is done through like dance in a fun way, playful way, and that's what we are training teachers in schools now to incorporate in their teachings. Yeah,
that sounds amazing, Francis, and I wish we had lots more time to actually dig into this, but really just to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, and please do continue with the good work that you're doing in Kenya. Please do make sure that young people are having fun and also having that sense of belonging. So thanks very much for sharing your time with us today. Over to you, Satoko.
Thank you very, very much, Amar and Francis. That was very excellent dialogue. We could listen to for the entire webinar, but then unfortunately we need to move on. And so now with that, then I'd like to try to be quick and some time to take you through about the UNESCO Happy School Initiative, what it is and how it happened. And then I don't want to spend too much time, as I mentioned by the speakers, Stefania and then Boren, that then this Happy School Initiative was started in almost 10 years ago in UNESCO Bangkok as a regional response to the sort of more education becoming more competitive and more stressful for the detrimental to learning. So since then, there's a regional framework developed and regional guidelines published with different countries, pilot testing the framework. With more the interest coming in from different parts of the world, we decided to launch a global Happy Schools initiatives, starting last year today, with the first Global Happy Schools webinar, where we discussed and then also published a paper on the Global Happy Schools framework. Today, now we are launching the UNESCO's webinar series, actually Happiness in and for Learning. We are continuing a kind of global country pilots, starting with Yemen, and then also we have launched LinkedIn group on UNESCO Happy Schools community, where like-minded people could come together and share information. We are also planning to publish a report on global happy schools toward the end of the year. So like, what is Happy School Initiative then? It is about promoting a holistic systems approach to happiness, well-being, better learning in school communities. We started with K-12 formal education, but then with a view to cover the whole education system ecosystem. We are focusing on building capacity of teachers and school leaders while promoting systemic changes for school-wide happiness through policies. With that, then we are hoping that the systemic approach to improving teaching and learning experiences while focusing on positivity, engagement, and sense of community at the school level, leading to fostering the lifelong love of learning, joy of learning. And the Happy School Framework, we have the 4 Ps, as Madame Giannini mentioned in the first set in her opening remark. We have the people, we're ensuring positive relationship across and among the education ecosystems, everybody engaged in education in and out of school. And also we focus on process to make learning fun and engaging through holistic approach to teaching, learning, also assessment. We focus on the place, creating a learning environment, physical and virtual spaces that is safe, free of bullying, and makes teaching and learning enjoyable. And then cutting across, we focus on the principles that recognizes happiness as a key enabler of learning. As mentioned, is not as a trade-off, not as a luxury, but a key enabler. So with that, we focus on sector-wide culture of learning, creativity, and innovation that has the growth mindset at the core. So from here to now, so today we are organizing this UNESCO webinar series, launching UNESCO webinar series on happiness in and for learning. So stay tuned for more webinars to come. And then, as I mentioned, we are continuing the country pilots and also country rollout, which you're going to hear more in the next session. And also, as I mentioned, we'd like to conduct new surveys and then publish a report by the end of the 2023 this year. Very quickly, I think I managed to quickly wrap up with that. Then I think with that, I'd like to now turn over to Juliet to lead us through our second group of speakers who will be sharing the stories of using UNESCO's Happy Schools framework in their national context. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you so much, Satoko. So now we're going to ask, what do UNESCO Happy Schools look like and why do we need them? So to answer this question, today we're joined by 3 country teams leading Happy Schools projects in Portugal, Vietnam, and Yemen. So first, let's go to Portugal, where a Happy Schools program has been underway since before the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's my pleasure to introduce the team from Portugal. And I'll first pass the floor to Dr. Jorge Humberto Diaz from the Atlântica Instituto Universitario in Barcarena to provide you an overview of the origins of the Happy Schools initiative in Portugal. Jorge, over to you.
Hello, Juliet. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, or good evening, I don't know. I wish you an excellent World Happiness Day. Portugal is ranked in 56 in the World Happiness Report. So let me share just a few slides for 5. I think you can see it now. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to share with you the pre-story of the Happy Schools program in Portugal. People don't always value the creative effort made before projects are born, but the truth, the real truth, is that their origin is due to the quality of the work done. We in Portugal believe in a systematic articulation between several essential factors. First, research in universities. Publications, we have here 1, education for happiness and well-being. The third one is training. The fourth one is dissemination to the other public in a general way, of course. So we did all of this before the Happy Schools program was created in Portugal. And in that moment of the creation, the General Directorate of School Administration which is an organic unit in the Ministry of Education in Portugal, invited us to present a lecture in 2019 dedicated to the topic of studies on happiness within the scope of the research, perspectives on happiness, contributions to Portugal in the World Happiness Report of the United Nations. We work on that in a meeting, and that was the first moment that we begin to create the program in Portugal. After that, I invited other specialists to join the team. And what we have already done in the program. So we created a logo, as you may see in this slide. We have done in this moment 5 courses of 25 hours in a level 1. What is a level 1? It is a course with theory, practice, exercise, and a creation of an intervention plan for the school. We had more or less 150 trainees in these 5 courses. We follow the UNESCO Happy Schools model, and we articulate this model with other research about the topic. We have collaborations, a lot of them. We created the Portuguese Informal Network for Happy Schools. You can see here the logo, the yellow one. We have partnerships with entities interested in the Happy Schools program. We organized 2 national conferences in partnership with some entities. We have 2 publications. You can see here the first page of the last one. And we did an application for a UNESCO prize. What we are thinking of doing in the future? We are working in a level 2 to develop the kit of activities and to applicate and assess the intervention plan. We will try to create 2 Happy Schools seal. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice day.
Is it unmuted? Okay.
Great, thank you so much, Jorge. And now Francisco Soares, Happy Director of a Happy Portuguese Public School, and Ruth Roberto, an English teacher at the school, are going to tell us about how Portugal's Happy Schools project looks in action. And I have some slides to share, but please keep this to 2 minutes, and let me share my screen. See you.
Please come in.
Hello.
Hello. Over to you.
Okay. Okay. We don't have our camera on, but we are going to start presentation, and Francisco Soares is going to talk about our project.
Good afternoon. I'm Francisco Soares, and I'm the principal of Group School Pinheiro e Rosa in Faro, Portugal. Our slogan is Humanist School with excellent results. Important for us, humanism comes first, then results. I'm honored to have been invited by UNESCO. Carla and Ruth are part of my team. Ruth is going to talk about our project leading to happiness. Happy Day of Happiness.
Hello, and once again, thank you for this great webinar. I'm going to talk about our experience as a happy school here in Portugal. It all started when our wonderful principal, Francisco Soares, and our fantastic science teacher, Carla Rego, attended this course that Jorge have just talked about. It allowed us to learn how to implement the Happy School project. And it's important to refer that this course was an investment made by this school, our school, for its teachers. We also acknowledge that we need a happiness department and an observatory department, which needs to have its own regulation form, objectives, plan of activities for each school year, and formal evaluation. This is yet an in-working process, as we are attending several brainstorming meetings with the responsible teachers and the school principal. The results of the surveys that we did in our school, that we have presented to the teachers, allowed us to validate our happiness culture activities and to identify the topics we are going to work on according to UNESCO guidelines and frameworks. We are happy to say that our school is the first Portuguese school that has a happiness department represented in its school board, in our school pedagogical council. It's very important to us to have this accent. We also try to inspire and tease our teachers, our students, and our staff with some posters about what's happiness and about our activities. We are trying to implement a culture of happiness in our school community with several activities such as Happy School Contest. Students award their teachers with heartwarming prizes. Associated School UNESCO Happy Schools, Students Awards Gala, our Bike Me project, Ride Your Bike to School, welcome parties for students and staff every new school year, and much more. We had also 2 webinars, Happy Schools and Youth Mental Health, by our Tiago Pita teacher. And we are also having students to observe and watch our webinar right now. We would like to finish our presentation remembering that we try to be a humanistic school and we want to have excellent results. To end, we would like you to come to our International Day Happiness event. You can take a plane and come to Portugal, to Algarve. It's a sunny day and we want you to be happy too. Our director, our principal, is going to play the guitar, so you are invited to come. Happy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Happy opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much, Ruth and Francisco. And now I'm going to pass the floor to the final member of the Portuguese team, Dr. Lilia Maria Vicente. For the past 6 years, Lilia has been the team coordinator for international and training projects at the Directorate General for School Administration and Management at the Ministry of Education of Portugal. And she will tell us a little about Portugal's plans for the future of happy schools. Over to you, Dr. Lilia.
Thank you, Juliet. Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to also thank UNESCO for inviting Portugal to take part in this webinar. When talking about plans for the future and following what my colleagues have just referred, I would like to start by saying that we would like to keep this collaborative work of the Director General for School Administration of the Ministry of Education with the university that provides the trainers and also the school cluster management boards, which has proved very fruitful. It is our belief that school principals play a crucial role in building up a school culture. Another important point for us is to assure the sustainability of the training process. And in order to do it, on the one hand, we have had the course, the Happy Schools course accredited by the Portuguese entity responsible for the accreditation of CPD activities, which allows us to grade trainees and issue certificates. This is an important variable to consider as regards teachers' career progression in Portugal. And on the other hand, we ask the trainees to fill in a feedback form or a satisfaction survey, as you wish, after each course. The analysis of the results of this survey allows trainers to make continuous adjustments to courses, content, and design. Another purpose we have is that of inviting school cluster principals that have attended the course to give their testimony regarding the changes that this training has brought to their school organization. The 5th edition of the course, of level 1 of the course, has just started, and we will keep on promoting new editions as long as school principals show their interest. And we intend to implement the level 2 of the course, as George has just referred. Director General for School Administration will keep on sending the flyer and invitation to the Ministry's network of 809 school clusters, each of which having a principal inviting them to attend the course and share project progresses. Finally, we are also very committed with the design of the Happy School Seal framework to be approved by the Ministry of Education. Thank you very much for your attention. I leave my email address on the chat. Please feel free to contact me in case you have any questions, and happy International Happiness Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lilia, and thank you indeed to the entire team from Portugal, and we hope that the certification process is swift and successful. So next we will go to Vietnam, where the Happy Schools project aims to support research and contribute to the development of Vietnam's education system by training 10,000 school principals. The project is led by the Vietnam Innovation of General Education Foundation, or VIGEF, a leading social and non-for-profit foundation. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. An Dang, Director of VIGEF and Director of the Happy Schools Project, and he's joined today by Mr. Pham Tuan An, Deputy Director of the Department of Teachers and Education from the Ministry of Education and Training, and Ms. Lu Lap, who's the principal of Hoang Khao High School in Hanoi. They will be speaking with an interpreter, so Mr. An Dang, over to you. You can unmute.
So I would like to send the happiness greeting to all the people on the International Happiness Day today.
Đoàn chúng tôi gồm có các chuyên gia giáo
Our
dục,
delegation including
các cán bộ quản lý và giáo viên.
Education managers and the teachers from project school.
Đặc biệt là chúng tôi có đại diện của Bộ Giáo dục Đào tạo, ông
Especially we also welcome the representatives from Ministries of Education and Training.
Sự có mặt của ông Phạm Tuấn Anh là rất cần thiết để chúng ta triển khai.
The participation of Mr. Phạm Tuấn Anh also play a crucial role in the implementation of the Happiness School project in Việt Nam.
Việc xây dựng trường hạnh phúc ở Việt Nam là cực kỳ quan trọng.
Happy School project in Việt Nam is very important, extremely important.
Bởi vì chúng tôi đang triển khai chuyển đổi giáo dục với một cái mục tiêu rất là cụ thể.
Because we implement the education activities with a very specific objective.
Từ việc tập trung mà cung cấp kiến thức học sinh, chúng tôi chuyển sang là phát triển năng lực để
providing the academic knowledge to students.
Hay là nói là từ tiếp cận đầu vào. Bây giờ chúng tôi chuyển tiếp cận đầu ra. Và chúng tôi được đánh giá là cái chất lượng học sinh không phải là chỉ là kết quả học tập.
And we consider that the academic, the learning outcome of the student not only depends on the academic results,
mà nó còn là kết quả của cái đời sống tinh thần,
rồi
suy nghĩ tích cực của người dạy và người.
And psychological.
Dự án chúng tôi là có một cách tiếp cận mà nó tương đối là độc đáo. Đó là chúng tôi đào tạo bồi dưỡng cho khoảng 10.000 hiệu trưởng.
We have conducted training to 10,000 school principals.
Chúng tôi tác động trực tiếp vào hiệu trưởng, bởi vì hiệu trưởng là cái người có thể là thay đổi mỗi nhà trường theo hướng hạnh phúc như thế nào.
School principal, because the school principal play extremely crucial role in the implementation of happiness school.
Ngoài ra thì chúng tôi dựa vào cái tiêu chí mô hình 3P của UNESCO và có điều chỉnh với tình hình của Việt Nam.
Principle of UNESCO and implemented based on the actual situation of Vietnam.
Sau khi hiệu trưởng được thay đổi, chuyển đổi rồi thì người ta sẽ tác động để cho giáo viên thay đổi, rồi học sinh thay đổi,
transformation of school principle,
cha mẹ học sinh thay đổi,
continue to move to train the students,
rồi cộng đồng thay đổi,
the change in community.
Và nhân đây thì tôi xin giới thiệu bà cô giáo là Lưu Thị Lợi, là hiệu trưởng của một trường trung học phổ thông sẽ nói một vài cái kinh nghiệm sâu sắc nhất mà bà đã thực hiện trong thời gian qua.
Some experience when she involved in the Happy School project.
Xin mời cô giáo.
Kính thưa các quý vị, theo tôi, xây dựng trường học hạnh phúc là một hành trình thay đổi lâu dài, bền bỉ và nỗ lực của hiệu trưởng, giáo viên, học sinh, phụ huynh để mang lại hạnh phúc cho chính họ. Thứ nhất là thay đổi về nhận thức.
Firstly, we would like to
triển khai
change the
những
awareness and mindset
để họ hiểu thế nào là trường học hạnh phúc,
so that they can understand clearly what
cũng như mọi người xung quanh
happy school.
Thứ hai là thay đổi về hành động.
Secondly, the change
hiệu
in
trưởng thay đổi.
action.
Tôi đã lắng nghe ý kiến của giáo viên, học sinh, phụ huynh và
from the teacher, student, parents.
Những việc họ chưa hạnh phúc, tôi cũng tìm ra giải pháp và khắc phục đem lại hạnh phúc cho họ, cho họ có những cái cảm xúc tích cực hơn. Khi đó thì họ có nhu cầu sáng tạo. Còn học sinh thì có cơ hội phát triển các năng lực cá nhân ngoài kết quả học tập và điểm số.
The individual creativities of the students and make the increase in the learning outcomes.
Tôi cũng chủ động thay đổi cách thức xây dựng các giáo trình trường đáp ứng những mong mỏi chính đáng của họ.
To meet the needs.
Giáo viên thay đổi, tôi thấy họ cười nhiều hơn mỗi khi tiếp xúc với giáo viên, với học sinh, phụ huynh, họ cũng lắng nghe rồi tôn trọng cả những ý kiến khác biệt và quan tâm đến học sinh nhiều hơn. Họ tìm mọi cách để có thể làm cho không khí những giờ học trở nên vui vẻ.
Make great effort to make the learning environment more funny and happier.
Học sinh thay đổi nghĩa là học sinh thấy rằng là việc nhận hạnh phúc không phải là chỉ là đón nhận, mà học sinh còn phải thay đổi chính mình, đồng hành với thầy cô. Khi học sinh đến trường thấy vui vẻ và thoải mái,
they feel fun,
có nghĩa là
happy
học
when
sinh đã
they
hạnh
go
phúc.
to school.
Chính điều này chúng tôi đã mang lại hạnh phúc cho phụ huynh.
This
Và khi đó thì phụ huynh sẽ tin tưởng, đồng hành và tích cực tham gia các hoạt động giáo dục.
Parents also entrust with us and also accompany with us in the learning and teaching education activities at school.
Chúng tôi cùng nhau để đồng hành xây dựng một môi trường ở nơi đó có hiệu trưởng hạnh phúc, giáo viên hạnh phúc, học sinh hạnh phúc, phụ huynh hạnh phúc. Và với chúng tôi thì mỗi ngày đến trường là một ngày vui.
And each day going to school is a happy day.
Và thay mặt đoàn Việt Nam, tôi xin được trân trọng cảm ơn
Việt Nam delegation. I thank you everyone for listening to our presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the entire team from Vietnam. It's great to see how our Happy Schools project really focuses on that key role of the school leader who sets the tone for the enabling environment of the school. So finally, we will go to Yemen, where the Happy Schools project is just getting underway through a partnership between UNESCO, Al-An Foundation, and the Ministry of Education of Yemen. It's my pleasure to pass the floor to the CEO of Al-An Foundation, Dr. Abdallah bin Othman, who is joined by two others, Mr. Awad Abdullah Abdo, General Director of Secondary Education from the Ministry of Yemen, and a student, Mr. Faris Saeed Bahamidan, from Salim Ben Mahfoud Schools, which is one of the soon-to-be pilot schools for this project. Dr. Abdullah, over to your team for 7 minutes sharp. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Juliet. Also, thank you, Satoko. And thank you, everyone. We are very happy to be with you, participant in this symposium from Yemen, not Yemen only, in Happy Yemen in English, but in Arabic, Yemen, Yemen is Saeed. Also, we participant in Happy Schools project. This project is one of important the projects at the present time, especially in the condition that Yemen experiencing in the field of education, where wars, crises, and disasters, and this affect educational process. With poor educational performance, lack of teachers, scarcity of textbook, etc. And need to find an innovative method to support schools at the lowest cost, especially since Yemen is faring from economic and political crisis. And also the government is unable to provide the cases happiness in education and create and stimulating environment for students. The exist in of the Happy Schools project will enhance the status of education and students' love in schools and education. We believe that Happy Schools project in the coming period will gain acceptance with and will expand, and we will have partner organization to contribute the implementation of project. As parents and parents and society, we will feel impact of on the educational process. But we hope that UNESCO will contribute more with us in expanding the project until it includes the largest part of schools and geographical area, so that community can benefit from this vital, creative, educational project that supports community stability. We thank all for working team in Ministry of Education in Yemen and UNESCO for their cooperation in sharing this. Thank you so much. Now, please, Mr. Bassam. Juliet?
Mr. Bassam, you can turn your video on and unmute, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Great, we hear you well.
Okay, I would translate the word of the candidate from the Ministry of Education. So, Mr. Aoud, can you speak? Aoud, Ustad Aoud. Ustad Aoud, Ustad Aoud Abdullah.
I believe we're having a problem with the microphone. Bassam, do you have Mr. Awad's remarks?
Okay, I would try to brief his words. So, as the Minister of Education is pleased to be attending, and they're very honored to be here at the symposium on happy schools on this day, International Happiness Day, corresponding to March 20th. Schools or our schools in Yemen aim to provide a safe and healthy environment, fully of scientific, cultural, artistic, with other activities. Teachers, schools, administration, and parents will be very happy to adapt this new framework, and we will work with other educational partners, such as our own foundation, to get the most out of this experience. And finally, we will thank you for all the management and preparation that you have done so far. And we would like to have or to finalize with at the end of this project to have a positive impact on our national and local level of all educational policies, and adaptation of this happy school will enable us to have a success story that we would like to give for Yemen education as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bassam and Awad. Thank you very much. And now I believe we're passing over to a student. And I'm not sure if he's still connected, but you have the floor, Saim Ben from Saim Ben Mahfoud Schools.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, hello and welcome. I'm the student from the Mahfoud School. I study in Scientific Section Secondary School. In this meeting, we're going to talk about the happy school. The happy school should have many points. The first point is special activities. These activities can help the student to improve and show their skills, and supporting the student to make out amazing and wonderful projects. The second one is creation new good ways for learning, which is make the student very happy, and in the same time make them happy and very excited and very eager for learning and studying. The third one is infrastructure. Also makes the schools happy if they are well and help the student to become talented. Okay, if you are asking me that why I'm happy in my school, of course there are many things that make me happy. The first one is there are great teachers encourage me to learn, and I have a goal in my mind and I want to achieve it. I want to arrive it. I believe that my happy school is gonna help me to reach and achieve my goal if Allah will. And our school is not closing in one place or in one area now. No, it's open to the world. We participate in many competitions, like in Jordan, we participate in ELO competitions and something like that. UNESCO can create like this position by doing some courses for teachers and supporting schools and giving the students scholarships outside the country, like go to America or Britain to study. We think Al-Amm Foundation to stand behind us to help us to be the best school in Yemen originally and show us to the world. Without Allah, then Al-Amm Foundation will be nothing. We thank the teachers that participate in this meeting, teacher Abdullah Boatman and teacher Bassam Bazenbour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fares, and thank you to the entire Yemen team, and indeed to the teams from Portugal and Vietnam as well for these inspiring projects. So we hope to see more of these in the future. And to end with our very short time left, I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Guangchul Chang, Chief of Section of Education Policy. Over to you. I will share my slides for some context.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all our speakers for sharing happy school stories in diverse contexts from around the world, and also other participants sharing their comments and questions. It was a great pleasure to hear how we are all pursuing the common goal of school happiness for better learning experience. I was at UNESCO Bangkok office when this Happy Schools initiative was first kicked off back in 2014, and it's great to see it growing. We'd like to see even it grow further. So let's end today with some information about the next steps. First, this webinar of today is the kickoff of a series of Happy Schools initiative. In future webinars, we will dive into each of the pillars mentioned earlier today: people, process, place, and principles. This will help us explore in more detail related work on health, creativity, play, learning space, including digital curriculum, assessment, pedagogy, and more. Next, if you are a country that is interested in partnering with UNESCO to create a national Happy Schools initiative, please reach out to us. And also, if you are already implementing a version of the UNESCO Happy Schools framework, please let us know. And we'd love to share your stories with the wider group. So we'd also love to hear from partners who may be interested in collaborating to bring happy schools around the world. So please join our LinkedIn group that was shared earlier. You can see on the screen. The UNESCO Happy Schools community to follow for the updates. Finally, you'll be sending out after this webinar, or unless it's already done, a background paper that we'll prepare to share the stories that you have heard today and provide a little more information about our speakers. So with my colleagues, Satoko and Juliet, who facilitated this webinar, thank you very much for joining us today, and stay tuned for more about our next Happy Schools webinar in the series on happiness in and for learning. Happy Schools Day, Happy Day of Happy International Day of Happiness to all of you.
Thank you so much. And if everyone who is a speaker could turn their cameras on, that would be great. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, GC.
And then
hello,
yes.
We are not able to do the video. I don't know. It says that the host doesn't allow us to start video.
I'll see if I can fix that. 1 second.
Yeah, we start, and then thank you very, very much for joining the webinar. While waiting, I hope I hope you can show us your happy faces. But then we start. Then thank you very, very much once again, and then happy International Day of Happiness. I think we'll be having in the World Happiness Report being launched very soon, and then we're looking forward to working very closely with you, bringing happiness to teaching and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello.